Jews couldn't own land. They could own houses but not land. They could own businesses, but the farmlands were all owned by the aristocracy in Hungary. When the Germans occupied Hungary, that was March 19th, big day. March 19th of 1944, they marched in. That's when we started to have to wear the Jewish star. And that's when we started to be limited when we can be on the street.
So you don't have any memories of like Kristallnacht?
Kristallnacht was in Germany, not in Hungary. Yes.
George, you mentioned about your mother in the camp. She worked as a housemaid, and that you had two other young playmates or people
Yes,
with you.
that's correct.
What do you remember about life in the camp in general, as far as what you did besides your mother and your grandmother?
A 9-year-old kid today is not the same as a 9-year-old kid 70 years ago. And a 9-year-old kid in the US is not the same as a 9-year-old kid in primitive Europe, where children age of 7 and 8 and 9 were earning their own living already. My stepfather was very well off because he was 10 years old. Jewish home. When her mother and father said, we cannot support you, you have to find your own living. So my memory is much more mature of those days than a kid would be nowadays. I remember very well of what is happening there. What I don't remember is names, and I have problem with names even today. I always have problem with names. I can't remember names easily, but what happened there, yes, it's very clear.
How many people were in your camp, and what kind of work were you doing?
We were 35 of us in that camp, and they were all from the same village. So we all knew each other. We were not strangers to each other. And we were doing farm labor, whatever the local people needed. The local farmers paid the German government for our labor. We didn't get paid, but they had to pay for it. It wasn't free. But the local people were very, very nice to us. Much better than the Hungarians.
When you finally got back to your village, what had happened to your home, to your possessions? Were they gone? Did you have a place to stay?
So we got back the house and some of the furniture. We had some good neighbors, Christian neighbors, whom we gave valuables. Some of the antiques I have, and I will give it to the Holocaust Museum. That was buried in their garden, and it survived because of that. But they still don't talk about it, because Hungary even today is a very strongly anti-Semitic country. And having somebody labeled as a Jew lumber is not something that they want.
So they actually took their lives in their hands as well for helping you.
Yeah, but even today, that is correct.
Well, because of
Yes.
Did
So
you have like 3 meals of food a day, or how were you, like, did they give you fresh clothes, or what was it? Was it like in a barracks, like?
we were lucky in that respect too, because Vienna and the cities were heavily bombed during the Second World War. They were building some wooden, not shacks, houses, single-family little wooden houses which had doors, windows and roofs. And one living room and one bedroom, and a sort of kitchenette-like place. And not all of these were occupied by the bombed out people. So we were put into these. Not one family, it was 4 families instead of 1 family, but we had a door, we had a window, we had roof above the head. So we had a luxury by comparison of the others. We were really lucky. I went back to find what happened with the camp maybe 15 years ago. There's nothing left of it. They were high-rise building in the location. But I remember the street and the creek of the place.
You know, you say Hungary was so anti-Semitic before. It made Adolf Hitler's job so easy, or easier, because Poland was anti-Semitic before, Germany was anti-Semitic, Hungary was, I mean, it made it easier. It wasn't like there were European countries that really cared that much about the Jews.
They don't care now either.
And that's what I hear all the time. I hear it all the time.
No change.
My husband always says, and it's true, that Hitler really kind of accomplished what he wanted to do, because much of Europe truly is Judenfrei, even though they might have little pockets of Jews living, in Germany and different places, certainly not in the same way that it would have been if it weren't for Adolf Hitler. So he really accomplished what he wanted to accomplish.
Essentially, yes. That is true.
That's my husband.
Yeah. I have a question. Did Hitler want to kill the Jews?
Did he want to?
Did Hitler initially, did he wanted to kill all the Jews?
Well, I haven't read my account, so I want to know.
Anybody that wasn't 100% Aryan.
He went after that. He went after the socialists and the union leaders and the elite first. That was what he was anti-socialist.
Oh yes, the Jews weren't the first on his list. Communist, trade unionist, and so on. That is correct. But do you know that he didn't want to kill the Jews initially?
So
He wanted to get rid of them. Anybody who wanted to take them, go ahead, take them, get out of here. Just make Germany Judenrein, clean up the Jewish scum.
Well, we did that.
And nobody took the Jews. And this is also one part that I talked to the children. What was the response of the United States, South America, Canada, England, France, and so on, the other countries? Nobody took the Jews. Nobody wanted them. And then Hitler said, well, we will get rid of them one way or another. So initially he didn't want to kill the Jews, just want to get rid of them.
Many Jews went to Canada because it was easier to get into Canada than it was to get into the United States.
After the war, not before the war.
Well, this was in the 20s.
Oh, that's way before,
Yeah.
yes. Yes. But that was true even after the war. I went to Canada because it was easier to go to Canada than come to the United States.
All my grandparents went to Canada first.
Where about in
Toronto.
Canada? Toronto. Toronto was a small village of those days.
There were Kelmans in Toronto.
Yes. Yeah.
George, would you mind describing what you remember about liberation, starting maybe a few days before, and then the day of, and a few days after?
We heard the fighting, the guns. It was a heavy artillery going in east, so we knew that the Russians are coming. And we didn't have any guards, so we didn't have barbed wire, so we didn't have that situation to face with. But the Germans sent out elimination units to kill the Jews there. And they asked the local people, where are the Jews? And the Jews said, they bolted weeks ago, they're gone. We were not gone, we were there. But for the Germans it was important more important to kill the Jews at that time of the war, this is pretty close to the very end, than fighting the Russians. It became an obsession. And the local people said that, they are gone. They are hiding. They didn't tell them.
What was the actual day like?
The day, around 10 o'clock in the morning, we saw the first Russian guy, soldier coming in, Russian Red Army. Smoky, totally dirty, filthy, and we hugged them and kissed them, and he didn't know what's going on. They didn't know anything about the concentration camps and couldn't care less either. Americans didn't know about the concentration camps either, so that was no different. So when the Russian came in, and then the noise of the war went more west and more west, it is over for us.
Was it fearful to see the Russians coming? Was there a doubt?
Oh yes,
What
we
was
were
going to happen
cheerful.
once they got there?
We were cheerful when we saw the Russians, yes. The Russians saved my butt twice. It saved me in 1944 and saved me in 1956. Because in the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, it very fast turned into an anti-Semitic uprising. And if not, if the Russians wouldn't have come in, and which was no good for one reason, but it was good for the other reason, there would be a massacre of Jews there in no time at all in Hungary.
George, knowing you a little bit, I know that for many years this isn't something that you talked about. What made you decide to begin talking about your experiences?
I started to talk about this one maybe when I was living in Colorado Springs.